to the Becoming You show with me, your host, Leah Roling. Do you believe you are capable of choosing your future? Sometimes it takes just one person to believe in you, for you to believe in yourself. If you find yourself continuing to say, someday I will take better care of myself, only to continue living the same day over and over and over again, then you, my friend, are in the right place. I am your biggest cheerleader, inspiring you to become you on purpose and with intention. Are you ready to create a life you love? I'm excited to share with you some big ideas that you can use today to inspire, impact, and influence your life and everyone in it. The Becoming You show starts now. Hello, my friends. How are you? I am fabulous today. It is, it's staying lighter longer. The weather is starting to turn here where I live. I live in Iowa. It's right in the middle of the country, and it's starting to turn. And I was just telling my youngest the other day, I'm like, I think I'm just naturally in a better mood when it's nicer out. And he kind of looked at me like, yeah, mom, like we know. It kind of makes you think like, how have I been showing up when it's cold? But I don't like to be cold. We had beautiful weather. I was just telling the producer before the show, every year now, almost for 7 years straight, we've always done this Easter egg hunt. And it's evolved from candy and coins to now they equate pinks and whites and patterns for cents or dollars. And we've got gold eggs. And so they do a little math. And the caveat is whatever it is that they have to half that and then give half of that, pay it forward in some way. And every year I think that they're going to be like, they're going to kind of poo-poo because now my oldest is 16. And I always think they're going to poo-poo the whole Easter egg hunt. And they're like, no. And I suppose why would they if they get some money for running around the yard? So anyway, it was a beautiful day for that. And yeah, I'm also really excited for this conversation. And not necessarily because I haven't talked about it in some form or fashion, but because I'm going to bring you to it in a little bit different way today. So I'm really excited about it. So if you've been with me a while, you've probably heard me tell you how I got into the causal coaching, the quantum coaching that I do. And so I'll make this really quick so as to not bore you. But I used to be a fitness coach. I used to be a marathon trainer, a weight loss coach, health coach. I would advise people on exactly what to do to cross the finish line and get to it, right? Because sometimes that's 99% of the work. I would advise people on how to create a 3,500 calorie deficit for 1 pound weight loss. I would create a blueprint, a map of exactly what to do in order to get the goal, the result, right? That they had paid me for. Now, 50% of the time, they would actually accomplish what they wanted. But the other 50% of the time, they wouldn't. And as you can about imagine, this is not a great success percentage. So the question that kept me up at night was, why don't people do what they know? Think about it. There's not much that we don't know how to do. We're literally just a Google search away from knowing pretty much how to do anything. So I want you, for the purposes of this podcast and just for the purposes of just setting goals and living the most largest life you can, to think about what you want in your life right now. What is it? Is it better relationships? Is it more money? Is it better health? Is it more energy? Is it to start a new job? Is it to quit the job you're in? What is it that you want? Most of us believe that the reason that we don't achieve the very thing that we want is because we either don't know what to do or we have competing interests that prevent us from doing what we want. And I'm going to share with you what is required to get your goal and break down these competing interests so that you can tap into your superpower. So if we know what to do, why don't we do it? That is the solve in this conversation today. So I'm excited to have it. You've heard me say this before, but we don't do what we know. Okay? We don't. It's like I mentioned before. If we did, we would have done it already. Again, there's a Google search, a course, a podcast, lots of people giving you lots of information on anything that you want to do in your life. So we don't do what we know. We do what we feel like. Think about willpower and the mere definition of it. The definition of willpower is doing something that we don't feel like doing. And willpower is temporary. That is why you could do something for a certain amount of time until your will runs out. So if we do what we quote unquote feel like, I think it's important for us to understand a little bit about feelings. And if you've been here with me for a while, you know what I teach and the work that I do around this area. But first, feelings come from thoughts. We have a thought, and then a biohormonal chemical in the body is released, a vibration, if you will, and we label it an emotion. Now, the amygdala in the brain doesn't differentiate between physical danger and emotional danger. It's all the same. And since we're not running from bears and killing for our food, most of the danger we experience, at least in this life, is emotional. But here's the thing. Feelings are not scary. Feelings don't actually hurt. So if we weren't scared to feel, just think about how different our lives could be. If we weren't scared of fear, what might you do? Might you pitch your new business? Might you quit your job? Have that conversation? Go for that promotion? Ask for what you want? If we could have a little disappointment tolerance, how might that help support our goals? We might forgo those cookies. We might turn into bed a little earlier, disappointed that we didn't get to watch the next episode of our favorite Netflix show. We might drink water instead of that glass of wine. If we could embrace feeling discomfort, we might push ourselves a little harder in the gym. Actually, we might go to the gym. That is why the price of any goal is just a negative emotion. Just think about it. If we got really, really good at feeling all of it, instead of resisting the negative emotion, we could create whatever result we want in our life. I think sometimes we think that when we try to escape a negative feeling by way of like scrolling our phones or eating or drinking or avoiding, that somehow makes us feel better, but it doesn't. Most of the time, it makes us feel worse because the negative feeling is still going to be there. You can't outrun it. And most of the times, whatever we did to escape that negative feeling in the first place creates more negative feelings. Feelings of shame, feelings of confirmed doubt, feelings of frustration, feelings of overwhelm, panic, or discomfort. So then our options are either to just, one, feel whatever it is, feel the negative emotion, or two, feel and resist. And it's that resistance, it's that escaping, it's that buffering that we use in the personal development space that usually has a net negative effect. So why is it that we don't feel? And I think for so many of us, we're not really taught how to feel. In our attempt to constantly fix ourselves, there was not time to feel. And we also have brains that think it's super important to avoid negative emotion. Remember, our amygdala doesn't know the difference between physical danger, being chased by a bear, and emotional danger, not being liked, being embarrassed, being uncomfortable. So it goes to great lengths to keep us out of both. But since we don't live in times of being chased, the primary concern for the brain is that of avoid negative emotion at all cost. It seems like the very necessary, the very mature, and the very responsible thing to do. So that's why we don't feel. One, we haven't been taught how. And two, our brain thinks it is extremely dangerous, like burning house down, dangerous. So what feelings are we motivated by that? 3 of them, actually. Think about it. everything we do is to either feel a certain way or to not feel a certain way. And we've all been conditioned to feel better, right? But what if the goal wasn't necessarily to feel better, but rather just to feel? Sometimes I think just an understanding of what we are motivated to feel, and then by contrast, what we're not, we just gain significant insights into why it is that we don't do what we know. And so I thought, by way of just having this conversation, what are we motivated to feel? What do our brains, what does that amygdala in our brain think is very necessary and useful for our brains to feel? And so then by contrast, we would know what sabotages us, what gets us in the way, which is why I say, and I'll say again, the price of any goal, any result that you want is a negative emotion. And if we were just to open up and feel that negative emotion, any result we want would be ours. And just knowing that there are three reasons, three motivations of our brain that keeps us from achieving the very thing that we desire. And the first one is we seek pleasure. That's the first thing that we need to understand about our physiology. We seek dopamine. We seek any quick hit of awesome. And that is why sugar is so addicting. We also get quick hits when we spend money, or we gamble, or we drink, or we do drugs. But what we also forget is that we get dopamine from getting enough sleep, and exercising, and listening to music, and meditating, and spending time in the sun. All of those can boost dopamine levels. But we live in a culture where we need instant gratification. So what would be required there would be patience. And it's not anything that our brain is very familiar with. But if we got really good at feeling kind of the discomfort in the need of patience, we would be able to prolong that dopamine hit for a dopamine hit that is actually going to support most of the goals and the results that we want in our life. The second thing that our brain wants is it wants us to avoid pain. We tend to not want to put ourselves out there to be embarrassed or rejected. We fear other people's judgment of us. So instead of standing in our truth and being honest, we hide to not feel discomfort or to not feel disappointed. We also resist pain when it comes to working out. We think it should be easy. We have created false formulas that solidify and prove why this feeling is bad. Like failure equals unworth. And so we have zero failure tolerance, which unfortunately supports our feelings of unworth because we know we want more for our life and yet we don't go for it. And so we just fail ahead of time. And the last thing that we need to be on to our little brains about is that we aim for ease. This is why change is so hard for many of us. We don't want to change. And I get it. Our brain is like, hey, Leah, we've been doing it this way and we're still alive and it seems to be going good. And that is why for so many of us, myself included, good is the enemy of great. And we don't want to strive for more when we are comfortable in same. So now we know why we don't feel, right? And now we know why we're motivated to seek pleasure, avoid pain, and aim for ease. So can we leverage this knowing with our superpower, which is choice? We can just choose to just feel. Process the emotion through, label it as an emotion, not as part of your identity. You are not anxious. Okay, you're a human brain that thinks thoughts, and thoughts create some anxiousness for you to experience. Nothing has gone wrong. You are also not a depressed person. You are a person that has thoughts that create feelings of depression. You are and will forever always be the feeler of your feelings. You are not them. And if we can't get the leverage over them because we identify as them, they will consume us and control us. So I want to ask you this question. What feeling do you need to get good at feeling right now in order to get what you want in your life? I know for me, when I incorporated meditation into my days, I had to get really good at patience. I had to get really good at patience for the practice, patience in not wanting to get to that next thing, patience in just allowing myself to breathe and be still without ruminating about everything else that I felt was way more important than this time right here with me and my breath. When I would run miles and miles and miles and miles, I had to develop a lot of discomfort tolerance. I also used to love sugar and sweets. And so in order to not have that sweet, I had to develop some disappointment tolerance. For my career, I had to dismiss my false formula. You know, the one where failure equals unworthy. And I had to get really good at failing fast and often. And once you know what feeling you need to embrace and get good at feeling, it becomes a part of who you are, part of your identity. And I'm no longer a person that doesn't know how to meditate. I also use that as my excuse, or doesn't have time to meditate. Instead, I'm a person that meditates regularly. That is who I am. But I had to cultivate that negative emotion of almost patience to get there. I'm no longer a person that doesn't like to work out or is just too busy to work out. I'm an athlete, and my life requires this type of training. And that isn't identity that I've integrated into my very existence. I rarely ever second guess, should I work out today? No. Just like if you're a mom, right? You don't wake up in the morning and think, God, do I have kids today? Do I want to do momming today? Right? No, you're just a mom. We have to integrate our identities, the ones that we want to choose on purpose, into the very fiber, into the very cellular essence of who we are. I'm no longer a sweets person, but man, I remember owning that like a badge of honor. It's a question, right, that we ask. Are you a sweets person or are you a salt person? I bet you if I asked that to anyone, they would say, oh, I'm for sure a sweets person. Or they would be like, no, I'm a salt person. But talk about integrating that into your identity. Here's what I want to offer. We're neither. Unless eating a higher proportion of salt and or sugar is benefiting your health in some way, I might recommend that you identify not as a salt or a sugar person, but as a human person that occasionally likes some homemade cookies and or some chips and guacamole, or both, like me. But I refuse to identify my awesome and messy humanness to a condiment. I'm also no longer scared to fail. I'm scared more to not try. I had to release the idea that failing wasn't an option for me. Yep, that was what I told myself for decades, you guys. And so I would either fail, confirming that I suck, or would not even try, confirming that I suck. Either way, failing not being an option made me feel even more like a failure. And so for me, the shift was away from the seemingly pretty little thought, failing is not an option for me, to this. I know that success is inevitable as long as I don't quit. Failure is my teacher, and I'm going to expect it. And once we sentence shift, it is so much more easier to integrate into who we are because we're not resisting it. I know you understand this think, feel, do, but behind the summation of the thinking and feeling of that 3-part formula is the being. I call them B states. And our B states are either states that will support our why or states that will excuse it. And that is why we have to understand not only that we don't do what we know, rather what we feel, B states, but we have to be on to our so-called competing interests. And the competing interests in our life seem relevant and protective